Fast Lawyer VR Reviews. For sexy VR reviews, hit the subscribe button. Hello, I'm Fast Lawyer. Today we are going to review District Steel VR, a game that was released on the Steam store in early access on February 16th, 2023 by developer Barricade Studio. It normally retails for $24.99. I was lucky enough that one of my followers, McCubeX, again graciously gifted me a copy of this game so I could review it for you all. Thank you at McCubeX. District Steel supports Steam VR and it was tested on the Meta Quest 2 using link cable. District Steel is a full throttle, full action FPS set in a dystopian robotic world where robots have taken over. You yourself seem to be at least part robot, but also part human, as you have what seemingly looks like a human hand, but also a robot rocket arm to propel you across the world. You can rocket yourself across big gaps. You can slide and rocket down while you rocket punch one of the robots, and you can also slow time. So this game often feels like an homage to Max Payne and all those old school FPS from the 90s that were fast paced and no holds barred in regards to making you feel like a fast action hero. As a big Max Payne fan, I did thoroughly enjoy playing this game. However, even though I really like this game and I do recommend it, it does have some issues which I'll get into. But let's talk about District Steel. District Steel is running on the Unreal Engine on my RTX 3080 on resolution scale set to 120%. I was getting a steady 90 frames per second. I did not experience any serious issues or bugs, although there were some minor annoyances. Probably the biggest issue was some of the passing, especially going up or downstairs. Sometimes I would get stuck in the terrain while doing that. Sometimes I would pick up items accidentally, especially spent casings, which is really bad when you're trying to reload and you get a magazine that's completely empty, even though you do have ammunition in your holster. And sometimes I would accidentally also store items that I wanted to use versus actually being able to use them. And especially around doors, if you're carrying an item in your hand, it tends to drop to the ground for some unknown reason. But overall, even though this game is an early access, it actually does feel like a full release. It does not feel like early access. Plus, there is enough content here. There was some discussion in some of the reviews about how much content there is. This is what I can say. It took me a little over 4 hours to get to the final boss, and I'm still on the final boss. The final boss fight does have several phases, and I think I'm on the last phase of the fight, but I don't want to spoil the game, so I'm not going to say any more than that. You do have full locomotion as well as smooth and snap turning available. You can choose head directed movement or controller based. You can technically play this game either seated or standing. However, if you play seated, you'll probably be too low to the ground, and there is no in-game height adjustment. I was able to play this game seated for large stretches, but there's definitely an advantage to playing this game standing. There is button crouch in this game, or you can crouch in real life. Finally, you can chain movements together. So for example, you could do a power slide, then chain that to a rocket jump, and finally landing on a punch on enemies. You also have 3 weapons. You have your handgun, which is actually your best weapon, especially at range. You have your assault rifle, which is good at short or medium range, but it does have a big bullet spread. And finally, you have your shotgun, which is very powerful, especially at short range, but it does have very limited ammo. And you can also punch enemies or melee them with any of the weapons. You can also grab enemies and throw them, or grab enemies and tear them apart. Lastly, you do have grenades, and you will have to use them because you often run out of ammo. So you do have to use grenades strategically to get rid of large groups of enemies so that you don't waste all the ammo. Your rocket jumps do have a small cooldown, so you can't just use it over and over, and the slow time ability is limited by the energy, which you can accumulate either by containers that have energy or just by killing enough enemies. District Steel basically does not have a story. You have 6 missions and a training mission along with a big final boss fight. There is not a lot of enemy variety. I want to say there's like 3 or 4 standard enemy robots. One of them's like melee, one of them has like an assault rifle, but there's very little difference between them other than one of them is just melee only. You have some flying drones as well, along with some spider robots that hang on the wall and have like this laser guided gun aiming right at you. You also have like this rolling ball that comes towards you and explodes, along with this big mini boss type robot, and it does seem pretty menacing, and it seems like it might be like a little mini boss, but it really isn't that tough to beat. Finally, you do have turrets that can take you down very quickly. You just need to be aware of them and take them down first if you ever see one. So while this game doesn't have a huge enemy variety, I will say it has more than most VR shooters. And since we're talking about enemies, let me talk about one of the biggest negatives for me in regards to this game, and that is enemy AI. It isn't very good. These levels are basically just set pieces, and the main difficulty is either the limited amount of ammo that you have or just being surprised by where enemies will spawn from and not being prepared. But once you know where the enemy spawns are and once you have enough ammo, it really isn't challenging really at any point. And I did have parts of this game where enemies would just stand there and not do very much. Visuals I think look great, but yes, there is a but. While I did enjoy the visual candy, and while this game does look great overall, a lot of the level variety just really wasn't there. You have basically the same looking drab hall after hall, and there really wasn't just enough visual distinction between each of the 6 levels. There were really no memorable sites or interesting places in this game to explore. Although I did enjoy the level design overall, there is very nice verticality in this game, along with enemy placements that let you either go in loud and proud or try to outflank the enemy to do some of those chain combo punch movements, or finding secret locations that you can get some more ammo or health or energy from. I thought the music and sounds in this game were okay. I don't think they really stood out to me. I think the biggest issue here is just the spatial audio isn't as good as it should be. Enemy robots were sometimes able to sneak up on me and be inches away from me, even though they're usually pretty loud. I just didn't hear any sound. The last issue that I want to touch upon is just the difficulty curve. This game really isn't all that difficult. It really is a live action hero fantasy type FPS, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's very fun to drop into a room full of robots and just take them all down John Wick style. But instead, a lot of the difficulty here is just at the very last boss fight, or in between, just because of the lack of ammo or just because you're taken by surprise. So I definitely think this game could use some tweaking as far as difficulty curve, especially since the game does have very generous checkpoints. I think some of those challenges could be stepped up a bit, the enemy AI could be better, and there could be more visually pleasing levels as well. Overall, I do recommend this game. I enjoyed it immensely as a Max Payne fan, and if I have to rate this game, I would give it a 7.5 out of 10. That's a really good score from me, and I do highly recommend it. I do think it's worth the $24.99 asking price given the quality and quantity of the content. This does not feel at all like an early access game. It's really well done. The levels are well designed, and I'm excited to see where the developers will go with this game upon the official release. Anyways, I'm Fast Lawyer. This has been my review for District Steel VR. If you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day. Goodbye.